Hey there, and welcome to Sullivan Smart Sense. I'm your host, Heather Sullivan. Thanks so much for being with us. Today, we're going to talk about something that I hope will help so many people that are struggling out there, and hopefully, we will help you if you need some help in this area. We know with higher interest rates, particularly on credit cards, people are really struggling to keep up with their bills these days. Maybe you've fallen behind on some credit card payments or an auto loan or a mortgage. And all of that can really hurt your credit score and your FICO score. So today we have an expert from FICO and a credit counseling expert from Money Management International that are not only going to give us some tips about how to improve your credit score and your FICO score, but also we have a free event this Saturday that I want you to know about so that you can sign up for this event if you'd like to go, and then you can sit down with these folks and get some real help to really improve your score. So first, let me welcome our guests to join our conversation. This is Tom Quinn, who is the Vice President of Scores with FICO. Thanks so much for being with us, Tom.
It's great to be here. Thanks, Heather.
Great. And we're also going to be joined by Thomas Nietzsche with Money Management International. Thanks so much for being with us as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always good to visit with you.
Great. Well, let's first talk a little bit about actually, you know what I want to do, Tom, is because I think people don't always understand the differences when we use the word credit score or we use the word FICO. Can you just tell us a little bit about what FICO is and how it's a little different than other credit scores?
Sure. So FICO actually stands for Fair Isaac and Company, which is the official name of the company that I work for that develops and offers FICO scores. And there are multiple versions of credit scores out there in the marketplace, but the FICO score is the most widely used FICO score. Over 90% of the lenders use FICO scores. So when you're out applying for loans, et cetera, the chances are a lender's pulling your FICO score, and you want to make sure that you understand how your FICO score looks before applying for loans.
Okay, yeah, it's so important. And let me just give you a chance to talk about this event that's coming up this Saturday.
Sure. Well, Score a Better Future is a national program that provides free educational events across the country to help everyday Americans learn about credit scores, and also provides access to tools they need to help them meet their credit-related goals. And as you mentioned, we're really thrilled that this next event is going to take place this Saturday, April 22nd, at the Baker Ripley House in Houston at 11 a.m. As an added bonus, we have Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia speaking at the event as well on the importance of expanding financial literacy in the Houston community. So as you mentioned, the favorite four-letter word of everybody is free, and it's totally free to attend. If you register in advance, and you'll be able to get in, and once you're there, you'll get access to information about FICO scores, as well as a free copy of your credit report and FICO score, with access to one-on-one coaching from independent financial well-being coaches such as Thomas and his team, and he'll share more information about that component later on. So I encourage your viewers to go ahead and register, mark your calendars, and we'll see you on Saturday.
And so I just put on the screen there, the website that folks can go to is fico.com/SABF/, and that SABF is Score a Better Future.
Exactly, abbreviation for Score a Better Future.
Awesome. Okay. Well, yeah, definitely, folks, head there, get some more information, and register for the event if you want to come out. But let's dive in. First of all, both of you, let's talk a little bit about what you guys are seeing on the front lines right now. We've got really high inflation. We've got rising interest rates, and I know that that's really impacting people's finances. So talk a little bit about what you guys are seeing and how it's impacting people's scores, and why you felt like an event like this was important.
Sure. So as you indicated, Heather, inflation is definitely the area of focus for most consumers out there, the higher prices we're all paying at the gas station and groceries, et cetera. So the questions we're getting from people who interact with us on our consumer area is wanting to understand how they can improve their FICO scores to get them higher, because many consumers may not understand that the FICO score is used by a lender not only to determine if they're going to grant credit or not, but often it is included as an important component in the interest rates that they set. So if you have a higher FICO score, you typically will get a lower interest rate on your credit obligation, which then translates to savings of, potentially thousands of dollars on like a home loan. So we are definitely seeing inflation as the main focus for most consumers, and really a big push on their part to understand how they can get that higher score so they can get the better interest rate on the loan.
Yeah. And Thomas, let me ask you a little bit about what you guys are seeing in terms of, how are people coping with these rates? What's it doing in terms of, making people kind of struggle with maybe their scores are going down, or are they struggling to keeping up with payments? Are you seeing or hearing from more people that are having these issues?
Yeah, great question. Absolutely. So we've seen about a 14% increase last year over the prior year, and it seems to be accelerating this year. And it seems to be impacting young people disproportionately. So we've seen a really significant impact in the youngest consumers coming to us, that 18 to 29-year-old band of folks. And for a variety of reasons, this can be harder on their finances when inflation goes up and interest rates go up. And then of course, student loans going back into repayment later this year most likely is going to create another wrinkle in this whole situation too. But yeah, we've got a situation where the balances are increasing, the number of people carrying debt month to month is increasing, and the interest rate on the debt is increasing. So it's really kind of a threefold thing that we're seeing. And interest rates on credit cards this time last year was only about 16%, the average interest rate. And now we're above 20%. And so if you're carrying a lot of debt, and for folks who are struggling, often that goes to a default rate closer to 30%. So, if you're carrying a lot of debt, it can be a really challenging time right now as you're trying to balance all those day-to-day expenses of everything being more expensive. I was pretty shocked when I went to the grocery store recently, and that the cart of groceries that used to be $100 is more like $200 now. But yeah, so it's a really tough time, and we're definitely seeing more distressed consumers, and the budget deficit, meaning that when we look at all their expenses versus all their income, that deficit seems to be increasing in our average client as well. So people are seeing a greater shortfall in their budget, meaning that they then need to turn towards credit cards to fill that gap. So, I think it's really going to come to a head here for a lot of folks if they're not paying very close attention to their budgets.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Money Management International is going to have a team of counselors at this event. Can you talk a little bit about what you guys are going to be doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll help folks access their credit report and then understand it, and then provide any support they need along the way, as well as any follow-up appointments they may need if they want to go through a full counseling session and go over all their financials and review their budget, establish a new budget, work on paying down debt, which, as you know, is where we're most effective in helping people repay unsecured debt. So if folks are interested in understanding more about their credit report, what makes up those components, the biggest thing is not to wait until the moment that you really need your good credit score to pay attention to it. We see that a lot of times people come in and they're ready to buy a house, or they need to buy a car, or they want to get married or whatever. They don't want to take a lot of, past baggage into the relationship or into that new phase of life. And so the time to think about it is really before you absolutely want it to be great. You really want to it's really a lifestyle habit to really be paying attention to your credit score on a regular basis, and to understand what's reporting to your credit report, and understand those components that make it up. Especially that payment history is most important, making sure that you're making those payments on time every month, even if it's only the minimum payment. Obviously you want to pay more, but the payment history is the biggest part. And then of course the amount owed, your credit utilization, your length of credit history, your inquiries, and your credit mix. So all of those things are important when you're thinking about your credit report and your score. So we can help walk people through that process and help them understand what they need to do to improve that score going forward, and to set themselves up for long-term success.
Yeah, and all great advice. And Tom, let me ask you a little bit more about since you're really our expert for FICO. What are some of the most influential things that people can do to improve their credit? And what would be some of your advice for someone who's really kind of barely making ends meet right now?
Right. So with the goal of trying to improve your credit score, it's pretty intuitive in that you want to make sure that you pay your bills on time every month, on time as agreed, because even a single late payment can have a pretty detrimental impact on your score. So it's really important to mark those in your calendar and try to make payments as best you can. And then the second would be to try to maintain reasonable levels of debt. So one of the things that the score is looking at is how much credit you have available to you and a ratio of what you're using of that available credit. And the higher that ratio, the more impactful it is on the score. And then the third area I would say is only applying for credit when absolutely needed. So we get consumers who call in and are surprised their score went down because they were at the shopping mall and one of the stores had open credit, get 10% discount on purchases today. Well, that new account being reported in the inquiry with the credit report pool could have a negative impact on score. So really trying to focus in on paying bills on time as agreed, maintaining reasonable levels of debt, and only applying for credit when absolutely needed. And that's a recipe for helping to improve your score over time.
Can you talk a little bit about, sometimes people wonder, well, let's talk, maybe about the ratio of debt to, what you have available to you. What's healthy for people to try and target as a goal that would help improve their score?
Sure. So obviously, the lower that utilization, the better. And maybe I'll explain with an example how it works. Let's say you have a credit card reported to the credit bureaus, and you have a $1,000 credit limit available to you, and then you charge up to $500 on that, and that's what's reported to the bureau. Then 500 divided by 1,000 gives you a 50% utilization. So that's how we're calculating that number. Just to put some realism to the conversation here. And then in terms of benefit to the score, the lower that utilization ratio, the better it is for the score and the more points you'll receive. Ideally, in a perfect world, you'd want to have that utilization ratio less than 10%. But again, it's a sliding scale. So 30% is better than 80%, but not as good as 10%. So you want to strive to keep it as low as possible, and that will give you the best result in terms of the impact on score.
And a lot of times people wonder how many accounts is a good, number of accounts. You don't want to have too little credit. You don't want to go around necessarily closing things down, even though you're not using it, because that can help your credit. So is there kind of a sweet spot of, how many accounts, how many is too many?
There's really no one single number. It's kind of unique for each profile, but basically you are correct in that you want, for the model to work, it needs to see that you have credit and you can manage it successfully. So you definitely want to be someone who uses your credit periodically, and that will enable the score to be calculated on your credit profile. But in terms of the optimal number of accounts, what the model really likes to see is that you show and demonstrate your ability to manage your credit. So having examples of different types of credit where you're making payments as agreed, such as installment loans, which would be like a car loan or a personal loan, and revolving credit, such as a credit card or a department store card. So having a wallet that has different examples of different types of credit and your ability to meet them is going to be the most beneficial impact on your credit score.
Yeah, I learned that myself recently because I had paid off an installment loan and I thought, great, isn't that good? And I got a bump out of it, but then eventually actually it hurt one of my scores because I just, didn't have that regular, I don't have a mortgage right now. So I saw the value in having sort of different types of debt and how that sort of plays out in your score. And speaking of, because this is, I think is so helpful now, is that people can look at their score. So what would be your advice to people kind of monitoring their score, checking out their score so they can see how they're doing and see when they're making improvements?
Absolutely. So I think it's really important that, number one, consumers check their credit report. So you can do that for free at annualcreditreport.com, which is a site created by the Federal Trade Commission. And that gives you the opportunity to get access to your credit report and make sure that all the information being reported on you is accurate, because that's the information that's being fed into the scoring algorithm that generates the FICO score. So knowing that, and if you see information that's inaccurate, taking the time to go through the dispute process with the credit reporting agencies and the furnisher of that data will be very beneficial in the long run to making sure your score is accurately reflecting your credit risk. And then there's also the opportunity to monitor your credit score over time to make sure that it's where you want it to be. There's several different ways that the FICO score can be accessed for that. Many credit card issuers participate in a program called FICO Open Access, where on your credit card statement, you're able to see your FICO score that lender pulled and is monitoring over time. And you can also get your FICO score for free at myfico.com and use that to monitor your score over time to just make sure that it looks like it's where it should be. And if not, for you to investigate what you can do to monitor and improve it.
How long does it take to really see a nice gain in your score? Like if someone has what's considered a bad or a low score, how long would it take someone to turn things around?
It really going to vary on the individual. So if you think about what kind of information causes a score to decrease, one would be negative information like a delinquency or a bankruptcy. And so those stay on your report for up to 7 years. And as they age in your credit report, they have less impact on the score, assuming that you're not having new delinquencies in the meantime. So that's more of a gradual increase of points over time for a delinquency that's aging off your report. The other main reason that a score could be lower is that you have high levels of debt, especially revolving debt, such as credit card debt. So there you have more opportunity to try to increase the score quickly if you have the financial reserves to be able to pay off or down a credit card. But that's where, because you control it, you in theory control it. I know not everyone has the resources to do that, but if you can pay down the balances, you'll be able to see an improvement in your score more quickly.
Wonderful. Well, Thomas, let me talk with you a little bit more about credit counseling for anybody who's considering this. Maybe they are dealing with a lot of debt. Just talk a little bit about how credit counseling works and how it can really help. And it's amazing, folks, when you see this, really within a pretty short period of time, people can get out of debt that they've been struggling with for years.
Yeah, absolutely. So credit counseling is something that's been around almost as long as credit cards themselves. Our roots go back to 1958. And it's a free resource to help people understand their financial situation and create a plan to improve it. Every year we counsel thousands of people across the country. And about a fourth of those consumers engage us long-term in a debt management plan, which, as you say, is an effective means to repay debt. And the way that works is we combine the payments much like a debt consolidation loan, but without a new loan. We work with their existing creditors to lower the interest rates down to an average of about 7%, to have them out of debt within about 4 years on average. So it's a really effective way to pay down debt if you really feel overwhelmed. And like you were mentioning earlier, a lot of folks are, when they're really strapped, they see that score go down because they are very close to their credit limits or even at their credit limits. The average client that we see has about 5 accounts, average balance of about $20,000 across those accounts. And so when you get to that point where you max those out, you typically see a pretty significant decrease in your score. And by engaging in debt management, they're able to increase their credit score on an average of about 84 points from start to finish. So that's pretty significant, and it usually brings them up from a poor to a good, or from a fair to an excellent, in that range. So that's a resource that's available to everyone. It's not as well known as a lot of other options like debt settlement or consolidation loans, but it is available, and we're here 24/7 to help people by phone or online at moneymanagement.org. And definitely, encourage you to check that out if you are someone who is struggling either with your score or with paying down debt. As Tom mentioned earlier, it's really important to stay current on those payments if at all possible. But I encourage people to really reach out before they reach that 3-month mark. So if you start falling behind, it's really important to reach out for help, either to your creditors directly or to a nonprofit credit counselor like MMI before you reach that 3-month mark. And the reason is because at that point, the debt typically gets charged off to a third-party collection agency. And at that point, it can become a lot more difficult to rehabilitate that account and to get it back on track and get it reporting favorably, and getting that debt paid down. So by reaching out before that 3-month mark, you can work with your creditor to get it back on track, or you can work with a nonprofit credit counselor like ours to get that account back on track. And one of the great things about a debt management program is that you don't have to make up those missed payments. So if you come to us and you're already experiencing a default, you're say 1, 2, 3 payments behind, If you start that debt management program, most creditors will re-age the account, which means that they bring the account current, even though you don't make up the missed payments after you make a few payments on the plan. So that can really give people a leg up, in addition to getting those interest rates down and getting that monthly payment fixed. And it's a consolidated monthly payment every month, and it just makes life more predictable and makes life more affordable. So, I encourage folks to reach out if they're in a situation where they have maxed out those accounts, or they don't feel like they're able to pay them down, or if they're just making minimum payments, and especially if they started to miss payments.
Yeah, and I just put your website up for people if you want to check out credit counseling. It's moneymanagement.org. And again, the organization is Money Management International. And really quick, Thomas, you and I have done several stories together, and I love these stories because it's so fun to interview someone who is buried in debt. Some of these people I've talked to had, $60,000, $70,000 in debt and paid it off in just a handful of years. Just talk about the difference that it can really make. And I remember interviewing one woman, it enabled her to buy her first house.
Yeah, I definitely see that as a theme among the clients that we counsel, is that when they come to us, they're really feeling overwhelmed. A lot of times they feel a lot of stigma or shame around having debt. They feel like, they've done something wrong, or they feel just stigmatized in general. And so, it really is great that we've had some clients who are willing to step forward and share their story with you, because that is, it's a difficult conversation for a lot of people, and it keeps a lot of people from reaching out for help. One study showed that only about 8% of those who need debt advice have actually sought it out, and that stigma and shame is a leading barrier. So really encourage folks, if they, if they prefer the anonymity of online or by phone, we can work with folks 24 hours a day. You don't necessarily even need to talk to somebody. You can go online and do it online at moneymanagement.org. But yes, once they've finished paying off that debt and they've increased their credit score, and especially have lifted that stress from their life, they can really accomplish a lot. And we do see a lot of folks that decide to move or upgrade their home, buy a new home, relocate, get married, get a new car, start contributing to savings, which I think is a really important thing. If you've been paying $500, $600, $800 a month towards a debt management plan for 4 years, it's a great feeling when you're able to complete that and you've got that money back in your wallet every month, and you can start, contributing to savings or working towards other goals that you have in your life. So absolutely, that feeling of success. It's always a great feeling to congratulate a client when they finish the debt management program, because it is such a moment of success for them, and a weight lifted from their shoulders that they accomplished that for themselves and have improved their lives in that way. So, we definitely appreciate you sharing those stories out, and I hope to have another one to share with you soon. So
Yeah.
we'll connect on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great too, because people learn long-term skills. They have that time to practice the new skills of better money management. Tom, let me wrap things up again with you to talk a little bit more about the event, because you guys have been holding these events around the country. So talk to me a little bit about the difference that coming to, this event Saturday can really make for someone who's struggling.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, there's different people learn in different ways. And some people learn and can kind of do a self-monitoring process of trying to get, for example, to lose weight or to um, tackle some other objectives that you had. And the same holds true for financial management. Some people can go to a website and kind of use that information and do it on their own. But there's other consumers who are able to excel better when they maybe are engaged with a professional that can help them. And I think that's the case with credit education. I think that participating in an event like Score a Better Future enables the consumer to ask questions real time, to hear other consumers' questions, to hear their stories as well, and know that they're not alone, that they can meet the objectives they have for having a good score in the future. And so I think the program definitely resounds for those consumers who, are interested in improving their credit health, but maybe just don't know how to get started.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, I want to thank you both for sharing so much great information with our viewers, hopefully just giving them some good tips that they can get started improving their credit. And then I also want to just show our folks watching one more time. Let me pull up here the information on the event itself. So again, it's coming up Saturday, April 22nd, 11 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. Baker Ripley, 4410 Navigation Boulevard here in Houston. And you can reach out to the FICO.com website for more information. You can also reach out to moneymanagement.org. So with that, thank you both so much for being with us. Really appreciate you sharing some insights, and hopefully this will help a lot of people get their credit back on track.
Absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity to interact with you and your viewers.
You bet.